foreign visitors who are here trying to keep the innocent civilians of Gaza safe can offer them any comfort or succor in this time. And it's a really, really sad situation that I think the international community needs to move post-haste to end before this gets completely out of control.
Sama, many thanks indeed for telling us about your experiences. Sama Badawi there from Plus 972 magazine on the line from Gaza. Let's bring in Rashid Khalidi, who's Professor of Arab Studies at Columbia University. He's with us via Skype from Aix-en-Provence. Thank you for being with us. A broken ceasefire, a humanitarian situation, as we were hearing there, that gets more and more desperate by the day, and a willingness, it seems, by both sides to continue the violence at all costs. How on earth is all of this going to end?
It's very hard to see how it's going to end. On the one hand, Israel has announced a variety of objectives involving disarmament, destruction of tunnels, ending rocket fire, which seem very difficult of achievement, particularly complete disarmament of the Gaza Strip, given the experience that the Gazans have had of being pummeled by the Israelis repeatedly over the entire period going back to Cast Lead in 2008, 2009. This is the third round of this. And given that Gaza has been under siege and blockade for that entire time, I don't see how the Gazans are going to agree to go back into their cages and allow demilitarization. On the other side, what Hamas is asking for, and this has now become a Palestinian national demand accepted by the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah and all other factions, is that there be a lifting of the siege, is that there be an end of the blockade, is that there be an opening of the crossing points, both with Egypt and via Israel, such that the people of Gaza can come out of what is in effect the largest open-air prison on earth and begin to live normal lives and reconstruct.
You talk about Gaza being an open-air prison. One of the accusations that's often leveled at Israel is that Palestinians are being collectively punished. Are they?
They certainly are in Gaza. I think what Israel is doing is implementing what General Eisenkot, after the 2006 attack on Lebanon, called the Dahiyah Doctrine. That was a reference to the devastation of an entire neighborhood of Beirut by Israeli bombing, the killing of hundreds of civilians. And he was essentially saying, this is what we will do if we're pushed. I believe, and there have been references by Israeli officials to implementation of the Dahiyah Doctrine in Gaza. That amounts to collective punishment. When one destroys an entire neighborhood in the suburbs of Beirut or entire neighborhoods in the Gaza Strip, as has apparently been happening, very clearly this is collective punishment.
So today we've had the collapse of this humanitarian ceasefire after just a few hours, the ceasefire brokered by the UN and the US. That the ceasefire deal featured some ambiguous language, it seems, which is perhaps why it failed. Is the US an honest broker in all of this? What about the UN? Is there a negotiating partner somewhere out there who can bring the two parties together and reach some sort of progress, of some way of moving forward?
Well, part of the problem is the intractable nature of the demands on both sides. In the past, both Hamas and Israel fought to exhaustion and essentially accepted simply ceasefire for ceasefire. Now, in each of the two previous cases involving Gaza, Israel did also accept a lifting of the siege, a condition which Israel never respected. The siege has never been lifted, the blockade has never ended. However, excuse me, I'm sorry. However, in addition to that, you have the problem of the United States not being an honest broker. The United States has proclaimed its support for Israel's self-defense. 1,500 Palestinian civilians, mostly civilians, are dead. 3 Israelis are dead. Clearly, one party is defending itself, but it's difficult to argue that self-defense is solely on the Israeli side. But that is the American official position, and I think that is a link in a long chain of American bias, which I believe disqualifies the United States from being an honest broker. It played a role in bringing about this failed ceasefire, and it has done similar things in the past. But for a resolution of this conflict, relying on the United States will lead to exactly the same result we've had in the past 20 years. The conflict will not be resolved because the United States refuses to abandon its biased position in support of the Israeli position.
Professor, really good to talk to you. Many thanks indeed for being with us. Rashid Khalidi there, Professor of Arab Studies at Columbia University.
Thank you.
Thousands of people have been protesting on Friday across the West Bank. Here, the latest pictures from Bitunia. There are also demonstrations in Hebron, Kalandia, and elsewhere in the West Bank. Al Jazeera's Kim Vanel is live for us now in Ramallah. What's happening, Kim? We hear that there's been a fatality.
That's right. There have been clashes across the West Bank today. Thousands of people turned out to these protests. These protests were called by various Palestinian factions, people coming out to show anger over the Israeli bombardment of Gaza, to show solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza, and also to show anger about the ongoing issues that people here in the West Bank face. Occupation, the more and more Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank. I mean, people here are still angry, and they do feel like one with Palestinians in Gaza. So the biggest protest that we saw, one was in Hebron. About 6,000 people turned out there. We're hearing 20 people were injured with live ammunition. And Tal Karem, 7,000 people attended that protest roundabout. And one person, a 23-year-old man, was shot in the heart and he later died. Also here, just outside of Ramallah, Ofer, where we were earlier today, there are a few hundred people who turned out to that protest as well, throwing stones, fireworks, that sort of thing. Police responded with tear gas and then rubber-coated steel bullets and live ammunition.
Kim, many thanks. Kim Vanel, live in Ramallah. Now, some other stories in brief. The Iraqi army has launched an attack against fighters from